He almost didn't see her. The light changed, traffic slowed, and for one strange second the city seemed to hold its breath. There she was at the bus stop, standing beneath a faded shelter, holding a canvas bag that looked heavier than it should have been. Beside her were 3 boys. Not just any boys. 3 boys who made his chest tighten so fast it hurt. The same eyes, same jawline. One of them even stood the way he used to stand when he was nervous, feet slightly turned inward. In that instant, every deal, every win, every luxury he'd built meant nothing, because his past had just stepped into his present, and it was staring right back at him. He stayed frozen behind the wheel, hands gripping the steering wheel as if letting go might make the moment disappear. Years ago, he had walked away from her with confidence, telling himself it was the right choice. He had ambition, pressure, a future he thought demanded sacrifice. Love felt like a distraction back then. Now, watching her straighten the collar of one boy's jacket and brush hair from another's eyes, he realized how wrong he had been. This wasn't just a coincidence. Life was confronting him with a question he'd avoided for a decade. He had learned how to carry weight without letting it bend her. The boys followed her gaze. 3 pairs of curious eyes locked onto him. One clung tighter to her hand. Another tilted his head, studying him like a puzzle. He smiled, open and unafraid, as if sensing something familiar he couldn't explain. He said her name softly. It sounded foreign on his tongue after all these years. She replied with a polite nod, as if greeting an old acquaintance rather than the men who once promised her forever. He asked how she was. She said she was fine. Asked about the boys. He paused, just long enough for the silence to speak. Then she said they were her sons, not our son. Hers. Distinction hit him harder than any accusation could have. Before he could gather himself, one of the boys stepped forward and asked the question that shattered the air. Are you our dad? There was no fear in his voice. Just curiosity. Honest and direct. The noise rushed back in. Horns blared. Shouted behind him to move the car. He couldn't. He looked at her, searching for denial, for correction. She didn't speak. She simply met his eyes, and in that look was confirmation enough. He watched them through the mirror. The way they joked quietly. The way one tapped the door in rhythm. The way another stared out the window, thoughtful and serious. They were strangers, and yet they felt painfully familiar. When they reached her stop, she thanked him and moved to open the door. Panic surged through him. If she walked away now, he knew he might never forgive himself. He asked for the truth, not explanations, not excuses, just the truth. She closed her eyes, took a breath, and told him everything. She found out she was pregnant after he left. She tried to reach him but stopped when she saw his life exploding into success. How she chose to raise them without resentment, without asking for anything, because she wanted them to grow up strong, not waiting for someone who might never show up. He listened without interrupting, every word carved into him. When she finished, he didn't make promises. He didn't reach for his wallet. Something far harder. He admitted his failure. He told her he wanted to know them, slowly, honestly, on their terms. She looked at the boys. They looked at him. The one who had smiled earlier smiled again. As they stepped out of the car, he stayed seated, watching them walk away together. The first time in his life, he understood what real wealth was. He knew this was only the beginning. He didn't sleep that night. The ceiling above his penthouse felt higher than ever, colder too. The city lights that once comforted him now felt distant, like they belonged to someone else's life. His mind replayed the smallest details on a loop. The way the boys laughed at the same time. The way one of them rubbed his chin when thinking, exactly like he did before making big decisions. By morning, he knew one thing with absolute clarity. Couldn't go back to pretend. He started small. A message. Carefully written, rewritten, then rewritten again. No pressure, no demands. Just a simple request to see the boys again. Hours passed before the reply came. He agreed, but only in a public place. Park. Neutral ground. He respected that, more than she knew. When he arrived, they were already there. He sat on a bench, watching the boys race each other across the grass. They moved with endless energy, laughter cutting through the air. For a moment, he just stood there, unsure where he belonged in this scene. Then one of the boys spotted him and waved. Not cautiously, not nervously, just openly. That small gesture nearly broke him. Talked. About school, about favorite foods, about superheroes and dreams of becoming pilots, engineers, explorers. He listened more than he spoke. Every answer felt like a door opening into a life he had missed. She watched him closely, measuring sincerity against history. When one of the boys tripped and scraped his knee, he reacted without thinking, already kneeling, already comforting, already knowing exactly what to say. She noticed that 2 weeks passed. Then months. He showed up, consistently. No excuses, no disappearing acts. Their routines, their fears, their strengths. He learned how much she had sacrificed. Early mornings, late nights, jobs that paid less than her worth, smiles she wore so her children wouldn't see exhaustion. The more he learned, the heavier his regret became. Not because of money, but because of moments. First steps, first words, first days of school. One evening, as they walked back from getting ice cream, the youngest slipped his hand into his. The gesture was casual, almost absent-minded. but it sent a shock through his entire body. He realized then that trust wasn't granted by blood. It was earned by presence, by patience, by showing up when it mattered, again and again. The conversation he had feared finally came. She told him she wasn't asking for rescue. She had built a life. A hard one, yes, but a proud one. If he wanted to be part of it, it had to be as a partner in responsibility, not a savior with a checkbook. He agreed without hesitation. This wasn't about fixing the past. It was about honoring the future. The boys began calling him by his name at first. Then one day, accidentally, one of them slipped and used a word neither of them had planned. No one corrected him. No one celebrated. They just let it sit there, real and fragile and true. On a quiet afternoon, as they sat together watching the boys play, she finally looked at him without armor. "I never hated you," she said softly. "I just couldn't wait for you." He nodded, understanding the weight of that sentence more than any contract he'd ever signed. Didn't move them into his world. Instead, he slowly stepped into theirs. Smaller apartment, simpler dinners, louder laughter, less silence. And for the first time, success felt like something he could share, not something that stood between him and the people he loved. The boys ran back toward them, breathless and smiling, calling for him to watch something they had built together. He stood, heart full and steady. He had lost years he would never get back, but he had found something rarer, a second chance. And this time, he wasn't going anywhere.